What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So over the weekend, I actually built what I deemed the ultimate Game Boy Advance. It was really cool because I put like a backlit screen in there, a more powerful speaker, and a rechargeable battery through a USB-C port. So if you missed that, it was a fun little build. I went ahead and did that and put that up on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I did a video about Stadia and why I was pretty much canceling it since our renewal period was coming up. If you missed those, check them out. Today, though, we have some stuff to go over, which includes a patent from Sony that appears to show how they could use the PS5's new feature, which we'll talk a little bit about, to possibly incorporate easier ways for you to end up in front of some microtransactions. And then we're also talking a little bit about how all of a sudden Atlus and SEGA are asking fans if they would like to see Persona and several other series on the Switch. They seem to do this every year, but it's interesting now based on what SEGA has kind of said about where the Persona series is now. As always, guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, make sure that subscribe button down below, the little red button. That way you can stay up to date on all the gaming news going on in the gaming world. We're going to start today with The Outer Worlds. That, of course, came out last year, a couple months ago it came out. And for the most part, people seem to like it, right? It was like old school Fallout, not old Fallout, but like Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty fun, and it was on Game Pass, which was great because if you had it, you just go on there and download it. You didn't necessarily have to buy it, but it also released on the PS4 because the private division had a deal alongside of Microsoft to make all of this happen. It was basically in the works with Obsidian before Microsoft came in and, well, bought Obsidian. But during Take-Two's call with their investors, they talked a bit about how The Outer Worlds did. Sold about 2 million copies, which isn't bad, I would say, right, for that project. I'm not really sure what their expectations were, but they seemed okay with the idea of 2 million units selling there. And then, of course, they have the Switch version to look forward to. But they were asked what they thought about Game Pass's impact on those sales. And to be honest, they didn't seem to know. They couldn't tell if it actually helped it or hurt it. I mean, considering people on the Xbox, if they had Game Pass, didn't have to buy it, yeah, that probably hurt the overall numbers, but revenue with probably a check that they got from Microsoft might have ended up evening out. I think we need more examples of this happening going forward where it launches everywhere and Game Pass, and hopefully going into next generation, we will see those examples with big games from third parties that maybe Microsoft comes in and scoops up as a Game Pass day one. Oh, and on that call, the same call, they talked about WWE 2K20, which was a disaster, right? It was pretty bad. There were a lot of bugs, glitches, and the game itself just wasn't great. The writing was bad. It was comical at times. There's a lot of memes and jokes online when it was coming out, and after it launched, it didn't seem to sell very well, as Take-Two themselves said that they were disappointed in the sales for 2K20, and they said that they would look towards trying to fix this series, and it's going to be interesting to see them do that. What's really amazing here is apparently because 2K20 did so poorly, WWE themselves reported lower profits and revenue, and they apparently pointed to WWE 2K20, the game, as being a major disappointment for why their revenue was down. The fact that Take-Two and that game did so poorly that it actually affect the parent company with their name on it is amazing. That is crazy to think about, but the fact that it could affect WWE themselves does make you think, okay, they're all going to get together here and try to figure this thing out, because as it stands now, that's basically the wrestling game that everyone would look at every year, and it being in that shape is pretty embarrassing. Oh, and I quickly wanted to touch on part of Animal Crossing that came out. It was, of course, part of their preload page that is now up, so you can technically pre-order the game. I always tell people, don't pre-order games digitally because, like, why? But when it went up on the page, we also had a little bit of information that you can see here that does say users interact and then in-game purchases right there at the bottom. That kind of freaked some people out. In-game purchases, are they going to go the way of microtransactions in Animal Crossing? Most likely no, because that is the same language that is used at the bottom of a lot of games that have downloadable content, whether it's things like Smash Bros, right? We see it with Luigi's Mansion getting some DLC. Any of those games have that kind of verbiage at the bottom there. So most likely Animal Crossing will see some kind of downloadable content down the road, which isn't surprising considering that's going to be a big hit for Nintendo. And I mean, making DLC for Animal Crossing actually makes some sense and will probably be pretty easy for them to do going forward. I don't expect you to go in and just be able to buy bells with money. like actual real world money, that would, I think, really hurt that game overall. So don't expect that, but we still need more information in general, and hopefully they have a direct coming up soon to explain a lot of Animal Crossing. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start with Sony and this new patent. Now, this patent was actually filed back in July, but it became public right at the end of January, like the last day in January, it was public, and people have recently found this patent, and it seems to point to something similar that Activision was trying to play around with and do. Now, I want to stress, patents aren't necessarily used always. Like the patent might just be for them exploring an idea or putting something out there just to cover their bases if they want to come back to it, or maybe they really are trying to use it. It's hard to say, but it does give us a look at kind of an idea that they have or a path they may go, or at least their thought process right now. And this patent kind of shows what they could do with that assistant, that AI assistant that we've heard of them working on, and we kind of expect at this time to be a feature for the PlayStation 5. You can actually see this patent here, and it does describe that if you are having trouble with a part, you would ask the assistant, the AI-powered assistant that Sony apparently has linked to the microphone that is inside of the controller that we have rumored now for the PS5, at which time it would run through a series of algorithms and kick out the other side with a suggestion for which item was used by the most people at that time when they were playing through that part of the game. And then here's a link and an easy way for you to use your credit card details basically to then buy that item with microtransactions, whether it's currency that they come up with for the game, or who knows how they would go. Maybe they would just sell it to you straight up. Who knows, right? It could be part of like a little downloadable content thing that you just buy in the store. Basically a way for you to not get stuck, but to pay money if you want to get past a part that is giving you trouble, right? That way you don't just put the game down and walk away, because I do think some people just run into that and they don't even mess around with it. They're just like, yeah, I'm done. But what if you could ask the assistant and it comes up with a way for you to pay money to get past that part? It is a bit dangerous if you consider that for the way microtransactions have been going. This, of course, is just showing ways for them to integrate it further into the gameplay and your thought process when you're trying to solve a puzzle. Now, third parties will absolutely love this. Ubisoft will absolutely love this, right? Activision, of course, already looked into this. They're thinking that same way. An AI-powered assistant that is alongside of you for the ride while you're playing that has something like this set up would concern me, yes, because while the better thing would be look up a YouTube video, bring it back to me, or bring back information that could help me, like I'm struggling with this puzzle and maybe my character isn't powerful enough, but maybe there's a way around this through stealth or different means. That feels like a better use for the AI rather than to just sell you something. But let's be real, it's business. They're trying to make money, so the better thing for them is to say, oh, right this way. Here's the EXP buff that'll kick you up a couple levels, and now you can blast right through this part. But it's a patent, like I said, might not be used. However, that is an interesting thing to see this pop up after we hear about the AI assistant that would accompany you while you're playing games with your PlayStation 5 controller. Next up, let's talk about this new survey from Atlus that was put out for different people in Japan to try to give them an idea as to where people would like to see those games go. They've done this, I think, like every year. I know we've heard about this before, right? Where they put a survey out and people were like, wow, they say the Switch and Persona. And every time I see that, I go, look, something would have to slip up here for SEGA or Atlus to back up and say, maybe we should move Persona to the Switch or any other platform, even PC. How has it not made the jump to PC? That's the strange thing right now for me is that, like, you don't have it on Steam. That's weird. That would at least be, I think, a good spot for Persona to sell at the bare minimum is to move it over to the computer. But this survey comes on the heels of some interesting stuff from SEGA to investors when they were talking about some of their game sales over the last quarter or so. But let's take a look at this survey. You can see it here, and there are several games on here. It's not like it's just Persona. I mean, you could see they have Persona 2, 3, 4, 5. They have Shin Megami on there, 3, 4, or 3, 4, and they have 4 Apocalypse. Digital Devil Saga. I forgot about that game, but that actually came in a twin pack on the PS2 back in the day that I really enjoyed. That would actually be really cool to see. That Devil Summoner, of course, Etrian Odyssey, Persona Q. They have Catherine, which I'm shocked is not on the Switch because that seems like an easy thing to move over, considering it was even on the Vita. And then they also have Odin Sphere, which is pretty cool to see as well. And they were just like, hey, just, pick games that you would like to see possibly move to the Switch, because we're just seeing what the interest level is right now. But if you go over to Sega, they talk to investors, and despite having several games, I mean, we're talking like, of course, Mario Sonic Olympic Games, right? They also had Persona 5 Royal, Sakura Wars. It's still underperformed. Like, the revenue for games still underperformed. They didn't seem too happy with how Persona 5 Royal did. Like, that's interesting, because while it's Persona 5, but just more content on top of that, right? So it's almost like a re-release. I guess not quite, but close to where maybe some people are saying, well, I already beat it, I don't feel like playing back through it, or it wasn't strong enough to get new players. Something happened to where it did not perform up to expectations for Sega, and that's where you start to wonder, is this survey actually going to have a bit more to it than just them testing the waters just to see? Could they possibly move something like a Persona to a platform other than the PlayStation? That's the interesting part here, because I do wonder if there is really some kind of deal between Sony and Sega and Atlus when it comes to the Persona series, because we've seen Persona Q on the 3DS, right? That was a pretty recent release, right? The newest one. So you do wonder if that mainline Persona series could eventually move other places, and if they'd consider doing that, because we've seen other games, Yokai Watch, of course, going to like the PlayStation 4. That has happened because Level 5 wanted more people to buy the game. So you figure, hey, the Switch is super hot in Japan right now. Maybe you move Persona over. They don't have the Vita anymore, where Persona 4 Golden, for example, went. Maybe they look at that and say, you know what? We would like to bring in more money here so we can continue on with the series. Maybe we do that. Maybe we put Persona 5 Royal on the Switch. Or maybe they stick to their ways and they continue saying, it didn't perform up to expectations. We'll try again, next year or something. We'll see. It seems strange to me from a business perspective that Sega would not do that, considering they're not necessarily tied to Sony, unless there really is some sort of deal behind the scenes. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and the idea of backwards compatibility. We've talked about this quite a bit, as it seems pretty likely that the Xbox will have all of their generations backwards compatible to the Series X, whether it's the Xbox original, the 360, or the Xbox One, mostly because the Xbox One already does that, and they've talked about bringing all of that stuff forward, which is great. It's going to be neat to be able to play the original Xbox games still with a disc, popping it in, and it'll download it. But the question has been about that PlayStation 5. Will it just play PS4 games, or will it also play PS1, PS2, and PS3 games? Well, Yves Guillemot from Ubisoft, CEO, talked to investors, and this is what he had to say. Those consoles, which would be the PS5 and the Series X, will be running almost all the back catalog of the previous consoles. It will be something new in the industry. It will help the old generations to continue to be big consoles on the market for years to come. And this is where the language they used here is a bit confusing. You could go either way with it. You could say, oh, he's talking about previous consoles. He's talking about, like, is he just saying the PS4 and the Xbox One as consoles, or is he saying, oh, the PS1, the PS2, PS3, PS4, like all of those consoles? It's unfortunately, this quote's been thrown around as saying, oh, all these systems backwards compatible, back to the PS1. We don't know, because this could be taken into consideration of saying, oh, just the PS4 and the Xbox One. I do believe the PS4 will be fully backwards compatible and playable on the PS5. I think it would be an absolute shock if Sony showed up and said just PS5 games, right? I think most of us expect us to take a PS4 game, pop it into PS5, and play it, no problems. It just comes down to the PS3. The PS1 and the PS2 can be done. They're already doing it on the PS4. Boot up PlayStation Now, you can play PS2 games right there. Not an issue, right? So I do look at the PS3 as the one problem here, but if they can solve it, that would be a massive thing. Can you imagine if the PS5 showed up on stage, right? And they show up and say, you can play everything from the PS1 to the PS4 on this system. If you have the disc, pop it right in. Would you buy the PS5 immediately when you hear that? I'd be very interested at that point if I could just play all of these legacy games. And I bet you third parties would too, because now they can look into their back catalog and say, well, we still have, Metal Gear Solid 1, Konami says, kicking around on the PS1. Let's just drop it on there. Ubisoft has a ton of games from that generation with the PS2. Yeah, they would absolutely love to drop their stuff on there, but we'll see. Hopefully Sony has something for the PS5 in the next few weeks, few months, we'll see. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a brand new Crash Bandicoot game. Are you excited right now? because I'm about to ruin everything when I say that it is a mobile game. Yeah, it was found actually, as you can see here, a Twitter user found it by the name of Jump Button, and they actually managed to find it on Facebook through Facebook ads, and you can see several images here that we'll scroll through that do show what appears to be a Temple Run reskin for Crash Bandicoot. All right, well, I don't expect cell phone games now to really come out and shock the world or anything, at least not in a positive way. This appears to be more of a cash-in or cash grab, to be honest, by Activision. I don't think this is the big Crash Bandicoot game that's been rumored. I do believe that is still coming. I just think they want to throw a mobile game out there because they see the revenue that comes in and they figure, hey, Crash is popular enough with the mainstream. Let's just throw them out there and try to get some money back. So while this is annoying to look at and frustrating, yes, I know, because it's Crash as part of a Temple Run reskin by, I believe the company that does Candy Crush Saga, so I'm sure those microtransactions will be very fair. But yeah, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this unless you want to play it, and that's fine. I'm sure it'll show up on mobile devices soonish. Apparently you can download it now, and these are ads that are set to go live on Facebook. But hey, look out for Crash Bandicoot Temple Run Edition coming soon to a cell phone near you. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This one is from RPG Gaming saying, crowd, hey Ubisoft, how about a new Splinter Cell game? Ubisoft, you want another Far Cry? Okay. So Ubisoft used to be a lot more creative with their games back in the day. They fell into this formula where they got really enamored with live service games. That's just the way it is. And they realized that they do these big sprawling open worlds with basically the same thing to do in them every single time. It would kind of give this perception of a very large game that's not that big. And they seem to just love that because they can sell things to you outside of the game that affect the game, whether it's experience boosters, which we've seen, and using fake currency and all kinds of other stuff, weapon skins, everything. So yes, Ubisoft seems to really like that style, and it's a shame because they used to be very, very creative, especially if you look back in the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox era. Man, some of those Prince of Persia games they were putting out, like when they put out Sands of Time, that was something. If we get full backwards compatibility, that better be one of the games that they put on like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X. Get Sands of Time, drop it on there. But they were just so much more creative, and it's a shame kind of to see where they are. And I was hoping that when they went back to the drawing board and said that we need to reevaluate what we're doing, that's what they would be looking at. But I look at what they're coming to the table with here. Another Assassin's Creed, another Watch Dogs that looks okay, I guess, another Far Cry. I don't know. I was just hoping for something a bit different. Maybe Gods and Monsters has something in store for us. We'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. Enjoyed this video, guys. Hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it is the Sony patent for microtransactions. Do you think they're just not going to use that? Or do you think that is very calculated and it is tied in to that button for the AI assistant with the microphone in your controller? And then also, what do you think about Persona and the Survey and all those games on there? I mean, there's some pretty good ones, Etrian Odyssey and several others, Odin Sphere on the Switch. Do you think they should make that move so that Sega can get more revenue to create more games? Or do you think they're okay with kind of Persona sticking with Sony, and then of course Shin Megami sticking with Nintendo? You think you just throw them everywhere? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.